Everybody, this is Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. Thanks for joining us today. We got so much to talk about. And to do that, we bring in our favorite attorney and the host of the Spartan Pride podcast on the Fans First Sports Network, my good friend. We've been doing this for 16 years, the one and only. We were doing it on radio before there were podcasts. The great Jonathan Shop. John, I had a youngster say to me this week, Mr. Carpenter, I didn't know that they did podcasts that long ago. I said they didn't.
Yeah, it was
How are
barely
you, Johnny
radio.
Guitars?
Yeah, it was barely internet radio when we started. Now look at us. We're into week 3, and I've been getting ready. I've been lifting the heavy, large weights to talk about this week because this is when some division will start to take place in the NFL. Obviously, all eyes on Las Vegas, but they're not the only team where people's futures are going to start to take shape.
Yeah, I want to talk about a couple of Raider things with you. I had an article this week that went viral. I mean, like a wildfire. You've known me a long time, and I got a couple of NFL executives to talk anonymously about where they thought the Raiders were at. And one thing, whether you're a Raider fan or a college fan, basketball, football, hockey, it doesn't matter, is that they're called fanatics because it's short. I mean, fans because it's short for fanatic. But sometimes, man, people can have overreactions, and they're entitled to any reaction that they want. But they get mad at media if our reaction doesn't match theirs. Well, our job is not to be fans. Our job is to be analytical. And I find it interesting because, man, the Raiders are 1-1, which is where we predicted them to be. They're first in the AFC West, and it was people acting like it was a dumpster fire. It's been an interesting week, Johnny Guitars.
Well, they all count one. Some mean more. And if you want to take a measuring stick, great idea to take it at the Bills. The problem is, just as if the Bills were coming all the way west to play a really good team, you got a long trip there, and it's also September week 2. So I understand the fan reaction. They're going to tend to overreact either way. I also understand the folks that you talk to in the league. They've got their eyes on everything around the league, but they're focused on their own teams. But they're aware. They're certainly aware, and they maybe come at it from a different level of analysis.
And they have scouting departments. And they have scouting departments who are looking ahead. Yeah, I agree. It's been an interesting week.
Yeah.
You know, I think this is the biggest game of the Josh McDaniels regime. I do not think he loses his job nor gets an extension with a win or a loss or a win. So when I say the biggest, it doesn't mean it's going to be a defining. But last year, there was a lot of reasons why they didn't win. And I think it was not being a Kool-Aid salesman. It was being fair and analytical to give them some mulligans. But this year, this is a team coming into Allegiant, John, they should beat. This is a team that in good teams find a way to win when they're not playing good, which is what they did against the Broncos. And then they find a way they just win the games they're supposed to win. And to me, this is one. They're supposed to win this one. I don't care what the odds makers say or don't say. This is one they should. Do you think I'm being fair to Josh saying it's the biggest? I don't think it's a defining game, but I think it's the biggest. Am I being fair?
I think so. And as part of my little research for this week as we go around, I looked again at where McDaniel's record is in Las Vegas. This is going to be game 20. As we talked about in the preseason, we talked about a lot of stuff, but one of the things we talked about was my rough idea that you need about 30 games to judge an NFL coach. I think this is a big situation and a big important one for Josh McDaniels. I think from here probably goes the rest of his time with the Raiders, at least for this season, but probably beyond that. This is a home game. This is a quarterback coming in that's a little shaky still. The Steelers have some issues. It's not really that it's a must win, but it's a must win if you want to have the kind of season you want and if you want to kind of turn the corner. This is not one that there's going to be any acceptance for anything other than really the Raiders' best play so far this year. I think this is a humongous game for the future of Josh McDaniels and regime to run the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, let's talk about the Nick Chubb injury. How devastating is that? I texted him. Obviously, he was going to the hospital, so I didn't expect him to read it right then. But I just texted him immediately and just said, praying for you. Love and appreciate you, brother. Brutal injury, but it really brings the running back position into focus, doesn't it?
It does. And to circle back to what we talked about this summer, for those of you that were here listening, watching, taking notes, yelling at the screen, there's a couple things here. Number one, this is the second major injury for Nick Chubb, which is not good for recovery's sake. Not good at all. Some of us that saw it live, we don't know what to make of it other than this looks bad. Some of us saw the replay that really looked bad. What's also worse is this is the second one. So you can get into some medical definitions of what that means for the knee if it gets repaired, but the odds are very long that Nick Chubb will return to Nick Chubb form. However, Nick Chubb is as big and strong as they come. So there's some hopeful encouragement there that if anybody can come back successfully, this guy can. Now, let's circle the wagons to the running backs, because obviously they're in the news this week with the Cam Akers trade, Jonathan Taylor not being traded, Saquon Barkley being hurt, etc. What do these guys have? What can they do? I really don't think they have a bunch of moves they can make here. What they're really going to have to accept is these are the market forces affecting the value of running backs in the NFL. I think what we're going to see is a very rapid evolution to drafting a couple of running backs nearly every year and basically treating them in somewhat of the way that we've seen the quarterbacks treated with the rookie scale. I hate to say it, but that's the way it looks, at least for the short term. It's not good for the running backs, and I don't think there's an easy answer.
All right. I want to talk about something. We see Aaron Rodgers go down, terrible injury. Mike Greenberg on ESPN is such a huge Jet homer, and I don't have a problem with that. I just have a problem with it. He's ruining his show because it's all Jets all the time, and that many people just don't care about the Jets. But it does interest me because he's interested in a friend of mine, Kirk Cousins, and wanting the Jets to go get Kirk Cousins. First of all, if I'm the Jets, I'm not making that move. I know he's in the last year of a deal, but you've got a good coach and he's spinning it. I mean, Kirk's playing really, really well. If you're the Vikings, are you trading Kirk? Or are
Not
you
yet.
like, no way, the way this guy's throwing the ball, I'm going to sign him to an extension?
I tell you what I really think is going on with the Vikings, and I'm telling you, a lot of people who watch this sport see the same. The Vikings have probably blown a fantastic window they had to get to the Super Bowl. Most of that was because they held on to the previous coach probably 2 years too long. To their credit, the Vikings are not going out without swinging. And did they hit a home run with the TJ Hawkinson trade last year? That has had a lot more success than probably anybody thought was possible. We don't see a lot of great trades in the NFL, so they get that one going. Good for them. Now they're trying it again with Cam Akers. But is that going to help them protect the passer? Is that going to help them in any way protect the passer? And can Akers catch the ball out of the backfield? Because I don't know what kind of blocking situation they have in Minnesota. I don't know. So we can't expect this trade to be as successful. But what I take this as is almost like a last gasp for a franchise that feels the window closing. They know maybe they still got a chance to do something. They had so many things go their way and they took advantage of them last year. But correct me if I'm wrong, and I realize we're only into week 3. You got to block somebody, or none of that really matters who the running back is.
Yep. Let's turn to Chicago. Now, you know that we've known Justin Fields a long time. Great kid. Great kid. And I got a lot of respect for him and spent time with him. So I genuinely really like him. I know you do too as well. But he comes in and he's in the locker room this week, and people ask him, why are things not going the way he should go? And he mentions several things and includes coaching. And boy, as soon as practice is over, there's an impromptu press conference in the locker room. Well, I was not pointing a finger at coaching. Here's the deal. there's nothing wrong with a coach pointing a finger at a player. We just got to play better around. I don't think what Justin said was wrong. I think it's truthful. The general manager came out afterwards and said, yeah, we value him. We don't want him running as much. Well, that's who he is. It's like saying to Tyreek Hill, okay, you're not allowed to run at top speed. That's who Tyreek Hill is. I didn't have an issue with it. I understand why football people have an issue with it, but I didn't. What's going on in Chicago? They lose their DC. This goes on. What's going on in Chicago, Johnny Guitars?
Instability. It's a franchise not without a home, but they're in a home. Are they going to remodel the home? Are they going to move? They're just unstable. Kevin Warren is in there. It's a new regime, which gets people thinking, is this thing about to turn over big time? Are we about to clear the house? There's some people want to clear the house today in Chicago. What you have is instability. And what I think you have is some valid criticism of, is the Bears coaching staff doing what they can to put Justin Fields in the best position to succeed? I'm not saying they are or they're not. I'm saying that's a viable debate. You have a player that's seeming to suggest maybe I've got too much in my head or I'm not being allowed to play instinctually enough, and a staff that's put on their heels by that. Probably better not to air that in public in week 3. So what we want to see is, what does Fields do from here? I would suggest he play the game, play instinctually, try to win some games, and deal with the results. But that's kind of a simple answer. I don't know what people want from him in Chicago, but that is an unstable franchise right now, and they may want to do some things to anchor and stabilize the front. I think we're looking at a rebuild pretty significantly, but the question is, will Justin Fields be there? I don't know, but this thing could go off the tracks before we get into Halloween costumes.
Now, I want to say this. Justin trusts his legs. And to me, he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's a guy that likes to run a lot more. Patrick had the discipline to stay in the pocket and to run at opportune times. Justin sometimes will just take off. And here's the problem that I have with that. Great kid, great integrity, super human being. This is not a criticism of him as an individual. I don't like his style in the NFL because everybody's big and everybody's fast, and people like him end up paying a severe price. So even though I know him and like him, I wouldn't have picked him because I want a guy that's mobile. I don't want a guy that will that's his default. I like the Patrick Mahomes model. So I don't blame them for saying, we're new. We didn't pick this guy. We're a new regime. But you knew what you had. And so if you're not going to trade Justin last year and instead you trade the number 1 pick to the Panthers, who go get Bryce Young, who plays a lot like, again, different style than Patrick Mahomes, but he does run, but he runs like Patrick only when it's the last option. Then the fact that you didn't trade him, trying to get him to be something he isn't, to me, is where my problem rests in Chicago. Am I being fair?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable criticism or observation at this time. Bryce Young's got durability issues already, which is not a surprise to some of us. Fields, it's a really good test from here. If we let Justin Fields as the Bears go ahead and play the way you want to, is he going to be starting in week 8 or is he going to be knocked out? That's a question. I don't mind Fields running. I mind him running by default, and I would mind him really not. If you're going to run, you got to be outstanding in your ability to slide and avoid contact, even if it means you're taking a yard or 2 less when it makes sense. Because otherwise, what do you have, 4 years, the old Herm Edwards rule of playing this way? It's not sustainable, and the cost is too high. So this is a story to watch, and it's a franchise that is unstable right now. Let's see what happens all around the Bears between now and the holidays.
All right, let's turn our attention to the competition committee. Boy, do they have a full slate of things they need to start looking at. What are your thoughts?
They're under focus right now. They've got some good people on that committee, but those people have other stuff to do. They got other stuff to do. I'm going to look at this list, and I like some of the folks that are outstanding. Frank Reich played in the league, coached plenty. Ron Rivera, Mike Tomlin, Mike Vrabel. These are terrific folks. Chris Greer. Holy cow, does that guy have a history and a family history around the sport? Stephen Jones. Okay. Rich McKay, Katie Blackburn, John Mara. Great. Here's the problem I have with that. Those people all have other stuff to do. The competition committee in the NFL, the most popular entertainment product in America, is too darn important to have 9 people that have other stuff to do. Now, I don't want to get this big bloated thing. I don't want a competition committee of 17 unless they stack a tier, but I think we need a couple people who are on that committee who don't have anything else to do in their life except, or any other football responsibilities, except be on that committee. We've seen issues, as we saw with the Vikings a couple weeks ago with the fumble going out of the end zone. We've seen people around the league bring that up, and it does need to be addressed because it's kind of bonkers. So there are enough issues that we need somebody full-time or 2 people on the committee full-time who are taking notes, helping prepare the committee, so when they do get together, they can get business done. Because there's really good people on that committee, but there's not enough full-time people on that committee. And there are serious issues that need to be addressed on a regular basis because the game is so good. We want to do everything we can to support it getting better, and it can. Time to tweak that committee just a little bit.
John, our last topic, then we're going to go back to the Raiders, is you trying to pull me into a pop culture world where I don't live. I'm not a pop culture guy, but the Super Bowl halftime show. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm old school. I'd like to see Metallica. I'd like to see Boston. They've had a death, but still Boston. I want to see AC/DC. I'd like to just see an old school rock and roll, go at it, have a good time show. Your thoughts?
Well, we have to address it. We'll probably address it more than once. And I can already see the comments coming. This is going to be the biggest thing that gets attention from this show. It's coming to your town and your city. So it's important. Here are my thoughts on it. There are 3 bands that would fit that category that you like that should be actively trying to get the halftime show exclusively, meaning they're not going to share it. Now, they've all done the halftime show before, but in days past, from the music industry perspective, where you only do the Super Bowl once, that thing went out the window when Beyonce and Coldplay and Bruno Mars all did it a bunch of times. So, U2 is going to be in the Sphere. We all know that. Big deal. They should try to get this gig. The Rolling Stones are rumored to be coming to the Sphere early next year, but are obviously ready to hit the streets and hit the stadiums again. And the boss, Bruce Springsteen. Those 3 should be considering or listening to people telling them, go get that gig. That's the first category. The second category is there's plenty of people that want this. There's people that are around Las Vegas with residencies, like Pink, who want the gig. Kiss, I'm sure, would absolutely want the gig because they're still trying
Kiss
to
would be great.
And it's a great Las Vegas thing. There's some other folks that want that gig, which is important to know. But here's what happened to the Super Bowl halftime show. It used to be a really big deal. And then some people got in there that wanted to tweak and wanted to share the stage, and they started pulling people literally out of retirement like you haven't seen in 20 years. Like, what's this person doing here? And they got turned down. Bon Jovi, Billy Joel, other people are like, we're not going to share the stage. And it kind of took a dive. So Las Vegas is an interesting situation because it's Las Vegas. And I think we're at an interesting crossroads here because the bands I mentioned at the start, they want to do work next year and sell a bunch of tickets. The old version would be like, no, you can't do that Super Bowl again. I would kick those folks in the tail and say, go get that gig. Who would not love to see the Rolling Stones kicking off a big year for them in Las Vegas?
The Stones, Metallica, or Kiss. That's my choice. I don't want anything to do with Bruce Springsteen. but that would be my choice. Go get one of those three. Just have an old school. I mean, nothing's, and I've been to enough Super Bowls. They get all the actors and actresses that go out there and hold little flashlights and crap. Just go out and have an old school rock or AC/DC. One of those four: Kiss, AC/DC, Metallica, or the Stones. Preferably the Stones, because God only knows how long they're going to be around. Even though it seems like their blood type is formaldehyde, but I just
Can we
I
stick
never
around
understand.
the feature? Yeah, I'm with you. AC/DC, that's not going to be possible because there's not enough guys that are still around, I don't think. But this is a story everyone wants to watch, and they're going to watch. We're going to hear more about it soon.
All right, let's get to our four featured.
4 featured game of the weeks. 2 of them last week, folks, went to overtime. So we're picking the good ones. All right. Yes, the Steelers and Raiders is a featured game of the week. We already talked about it. The Raiders are going to and should win that one. But
wait, though. But I get your prediction every week. What's your prediction?
My prediction this time is 24-10. Lock it down. It's going to be a lockdown. The Raiders defense is going to look nasty with a little bit of an edge, and it's going to be trouble city for the traveling young quarterback from Pittsburgh, who's still got some work to do. He's not really looking super ready yet to me on a 60-minute basis. Now, somebody's going home 0-3. The Chargers at the Vikings. Look out below.
Here's the problem. And you've heard me say this 100 times. The Chargers are one of the most talented teams in the National Football League, with the worst head coach in the National Football League. I have no faith in their coach. The Vikings at home, they can't afford to lose a third one. The Chargers should win this. I'd be stunned if the Chargers aren't favored in Vegas. But not trusting their coach, I'm going to go with Kirk and the Vikings.
This one is must-see TV. I'm going to go with the Vikings just because they're at home and because they're trying with the Akers thing. Now, somebody else could have a rough weekend in the Midwest. The Rams are going to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's back against the wall. Some of us thought Cincinnati, for whatever reason, was going to have a rough year. Does that continue this week? Because if so, look out for a top 10 draft pick.
This one is so hard to me because obviously my affection for Matt Stafford, and I appreciate him. I also have friends like Joey Bocci and others that play on to me at home with their back against the wall. I don't think the Rams are a Super Bowl team, although they were better than San Francisco in the joint practices. I'm going to ride Joey Bocci with a late INT of Stafford driving to win the game, and I'm going to ride with the Natty.
This is a contract game. This is what you hopefully pay Joe Burrow for. I like him also. The last one is right in that Midwest. We got this upstart Falcons going to the upstart Lions. Somebody's going to get a little reality check. The reality is that pride is going to growl a little louder. The Lions should take care of the Falcons. The Falcons are not that good.
I agree. Not a buyer on the Falcons, although I love Bijan Robinson. And I'm going to go with the Lions too. All right, John.
4 featured. Check them out.
Awesome. All right, I'm Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. He's John Shop from the Spartan Pride Podcast on FFSN. We appreciate all of you. We'll see you next week.